Mr. Booth, dial the operator. Dr. Booth, dial the operator. Dr. Sod, dial the operator, please. Dr. Sod, dial the operator.
Sounds from inside the walls of a hospital.
Dr. Schoenfeld, 305. Dr. Schoenfeld, 305.
They've been echoing through Ascension St. Vincent Health in Carmel for 40 years. Next on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC, we get a first-hand account of what it's like to run a hospital in this era of modern-day high-tech healthcare. Chad Dilley on the challenges, costs, and the importance of culture as the president of Ascension St. Vincent Health, Carmel. And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Chad Dilley. Chad is the president of Ascension St. Vincent Health in Carmel, Hamilton County, one of the fastest growing counties, certainly in Indiana and indeed in the Midwest. And Chad, how are you?
Hey, doing great this morning, Gary. How are you?
Good. As mentioned, Carmel and Hamilton County, fast-growing areas. Amazing how that, not just Carmel, but all of Hamilton County has transformed over the last several decades. And St. Vincent, Ascension St. Vincent now, has certainly been a part of that. So the hospital, you're very prominently located on US 31. Hard to believe that's been there for 40 years, right?
Yes, yeah. So in November, we celebrate 40 years here. Opened up in November 1985, and really looking forward to a great celebration. A lot more cornfields around a hospital when it was originally built and what there is today, but just a beautiful community, thriving community, and really fortunate and pleased to serve the community here.
Yeah, interesting. And again, in terms of major growth in that region, and St. Vincent really was kind of the trailblazer when it comes to Indianapolis-based health systems that ventured into Hamilton County with that location some 40 years ago. Now, I think the number is 11 acute care and specialty hospitals in Hamilton County. What is it that makes Carmel, but more broadly Hamilton County, attractive from a business standpoint?
Yeah, it's a great place to work, great place to live, great place to raise a family. And I think when you have amenities that folks appreciate, so that you can draw talent to it. Again, certainly with the amount of healthcare that we have along here in Hamilton County, there's a lot of growth and a lot of demand that happens here. I know that where we are at, we have seen a lot of growth, and that just goes along with the population growth. And as you look at the areas around, Carmel certainly has grown over the years. Obviously, Westfield is definitely on a big growth trajectory, Noblesville as well, too. So just, it's a great place to work and live and raise a family, and you attract talent when you have those amenities.
Yeah. How about that talent equation? Certainly, the nursing sector has been challenged in getting enough nurses out there. How do you see and experience workforce issues?
Yeah, Gary, that's a great question. The demand on healthcare is going to continue to grow as the baby boomer generation continues to age. The stress that will put on healthcare providers and just the amount of volume and demand will be significant. And when I look at the future of healthcare, it's all people related, and having enough people to take care of the demands and what you have. And I think if you're talking about people, then you have to have great culture. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Ascension St. Vincent is a culture with a very clear mission. And we have many associates that are very dedicated, been here for multiple decades. We actually just celebrated one associate that just celebrated 50 years. She actually started her career down at the original Fall Creek Hospital, down in Indianapolis, within St. Vincent. And, that's very common in St. Vincent to have nurses that have been here for decades. And I think that speaks volume to the culture and just the mission and the fits that we have with team members that are focused on it.
How does growth, when you're in a high growth area like that, how does that affect the operations planning? Again, operations of the hospital, does that present any special challenges, dealing with the growth in the region?
Yeah, it's not necessarily easy to stand something up overnight to continue with that. So you have to be very thoughtful about where you see the market going. You look at the demographics, you see where the market's going, you project that demand, and then you bump that up into what's our operational capacity. Operational capacity is something that we look at every day. We huddle every day. We talk about throughput every day. And as you see healthcare continue to evolve, you're seeing more patients actually go to lower acuity settings, which are actually lower cost of care settings. So it's good for patients. They're getting out quicker, lower cost of care. And you focus a lot of time and attention on throughput. And so we look at what's called length of stay, and we're making sure that we're tracking where we should be with our length of stay and getting patients out in a timely fashion.
What's the biggest challenge you face as a hospital administrator these days?
Gary, I think I would answer that question differently as days go by. There's a variety of factors that face healthcare entities and hospitals in particular, whether it's making sure you have enough staff, changes potentially in payment structures, or just the overall macro view of healthcare. I would say it changes as day goes by. Where I try to put my focus is making sure that regardless of what noise is out there, that we are focused as a team on the patient in front of us. And each day is going to present a different challenge. And I think it's on leadership to keep the focus on the patient, keep that at the center of everything we do, regardless of what challenge comes our way, and making sure that as leaders, we kind of absorb, we kind of cushion whatever tension it is that we're facing. And we make sure that the team on the front line has what they need to take care of the patient in front of them.
You in healthcare obviously deal with a very personal situation, the health of men, women, children. So it's a very personalized type thing, but yet you are in business as well. How do you differentiate yourself? Again, a competitive marketplace like Hamilton County with a lot of different hospitals. What's key to differentiate or to get people to want to come to Ascension St. Vincent?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that we actually talk about a lot inside of St. Vincent here. I would go back to our heritage. We started in 1881 with the Daughters of Charity. They brought $34.77 to Indiana back in 1881. And at the invitation of Bishop Chittard and a $50 gift from Bishop Chittard, they opened up the hospital in Fall Creek. And when I think about why they came, we still try to keep that why present. And keeping healthcare human is really one of the pushes that they have. When you get into a mission statement, you can be a part of organizations where you have a mission statement, a vision statement on a wall. It is very real here. Our mission statement is that we're rooted in the loving ministry of Jesus as healer, and we commit ourselves as serving all persons with special attention to those that are poor and vulnerable. And Gary, that is something that we lean into. That is something that is embedded within our culture. We start every meeting with what we call reflection, and that can be a prayer, that can be scripture, that can be a quote, a poem. It gives us an opportunity to center ourselves, to remind us, even as we're going into some of the most complex budget meeting, we take time to reflect at the beginning of the meeting. It's encouraged. We actually coached on how to reflect, and it gives us the opportunity to pause and say, this is why we are here. And as we go throughout and we make these difficult decisions, we make these strategic decisions, we keep the why at the center of what we're doing here.
So I wanted to ask you how in a very challenging, competitive environment, how you keep that original mission of the hospital in the forefront. It sounds like just being intentional about it is an important part of it.
It's very intentional, and it's on leaders to drive that, and having the right leaders on the team. When I interview any leader here, I ask to be a part of the final interview for any leader here, supervisor and above. And I start off each one of those leadership interviews with scripture. It comes out of Philippians, and it's do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility count others to be above you. And so what I try to do is instill that humility inside of our leaders. And really what we're talking about is a culture of servant leadership. And that this is the expectation when you come in. You're going to count others above you. You're going to count others, and you're going to sacrifice to make sure that your team has what they need. And we look for that, and we recognize it, we celebrate it, and we correct it when we don't see it.
Yeah. Fast forward back to today in terms of modern day medicine, technology is such an important part of that. Just kind of some top line observations. Technology certainly has transformed healthcare for many, many years. It seems like it's on warp speed now with artificial intelligence and all those types of things. Your view of technology and the impact it's having on healthcare delivery.
Yeah, it's here and it's good. I think about the industry as it's evolving, and I think about kind of getting back to my previous points, getting patients into a lower acuity setting and getting patients into a situation where they're actually going to recover quicker. We've recently invested in additional robotic surgery here. So we have 3 Da Vinci 5 robots here in Carmel, and that's the latest and greatest technology that we're going to maintain. The reason that we invest in that is because it creates more of a minimally invasive surgical environment so their patients can actually recover faster, spend less time in the hospital, get home to their loved ones. And so that's great for the patient. There's lower costs too. And so as the cost of healthcare conversation is and always will be around, and appropriately will always be around, we are always looking for ways that we can get patients into better situations, recover faster, and deliver at a little cost.
As you look at artificial intelligence, certainly there are winners and losers, pros and cons. In your view, it sounds like on balance, you think AI will have a positive impact on healthcare?
I think we have to pay attention to it. I think it's to be determined. I think that there's a lot of promising technology out there. When I look at something like ambient listening and how that can help out with charting, when I look at the amount of time that the doctors spend in what's called pajama time, where they're actually charting in off hours, are there ways that we can leverage some of this technology so that we can make the team more efficient and to where they can get back to a little bit more face-to-face patient care? And so those are things where I think it's promising. I think it's something we have to pay attention to. Gary, I'm naturally going to be optimistic and see that there's a way and a path forward with that. And so I'm hopeful. I'm definitely hopeful. We need it.
Ascension St. Vincent certainly has a major footprint here in Indianapolis and central Indiana, but you are statewide. Give us the footprint of where St. Vincent is around the state of Indiana.
Yeah, so we have acute care hospitals in Kokomo, Anderson, Carmel, Fishers, certainly the Indianapolis campus, and then all the way down to Evansville. And we run that entire gamut there. Now, we have critical access hospitals in Williamsport, Elvia, many of the rural areas there. So we actually have about a third of the critical access hospitals inside the state of Indiana. And to qualify as a critical access hospital, you have to be outside of a 25-mile radius from an actual acute care hospital. So some very rural areas here. The other thing that we have that's really penetrating the market, we're seeing a lot of momentum with, is our employer solutions. And so we actually work with 45% of school districts, whether that's public or private school districts throughout the state, in a direct contracting format, to where we're able to provide healthcare to low costs to school districts, which saves taxpayers money in the back end. And so a lot of clinics that are popping up with employer solutions with that. And I think, again, as the cost of healthcare conversation has and will continue to always be there, we think that working directly with large employers is really a path forward for us.
Talk about the difference in healthcare delivery, and the nuances between your hospital in Carmel, your metropolitan Indianapolis, versus a rural setting here. Obviously, two very different scenarios. Talk about rural healthcare delivery. There's been a lot of concern about rural hospitals and the ability of, healthcare to get delivered in rural settings.
Yeah. Gary, I'm just so impressed with our colleagues that are in rural settings, the amount of dedication that they have, and they tend to be the largest employer in town as well, too. And they do a great job of keeping patients as much as they can in their local community. And that's really the intent, is taking care of patients to the areas where it's appropriate. And when it's not appropriate, getting into a tertiary or quaternary referral center, like our campus off of 86th Street. And so what you'll find in rural hospitals, particularly with inside of St. Vincent, are folks that are just absolutely dedicated, and that they do a great job, and they care deeply, deeply about their community and doing what they can to keep care there local. And if not, when it's appropriate, and we have good mechanisms with that, right? Like, we have good transportation, we have good transfer processes. So when it's appropriate, that we get patients to where they need to be.
Can technology be a positive addition, additive to those rural hospitals and the ability to connect with people?
Sure. I think you're seeing that in some telehealth formats, right? Some telehealth formats, you're seeing that. So I think that I'm optimistic about how that can continue to grow as well, too.
As you look at Indiana, when it comes to healthcare, how would you assess the state of healthcare overall in Indiana?
Yeah, I think we've got some work to do in terms of becoming a healthier state. There's a lot of conversation right now just about personal accountability of health. I see it within my own personal health, actions I do or don't do, and how it affects my personal health. So that's why we get involved in the community. So this Saturday, I don't know when the podcast will be delivered, so it may be stale once that comes out, but this Saturday we are supporting the Carmel Marathon. And the reason that we support a Carmel Marathon is because we want to promote folks to live a long and healthy lifestyle. And we want to promote that health. We want to promote folks taking care of themselves, eating properly, getting the proper exercise. And I think any data set that you look at, you can see that Indiana has a long ways to go. When I think about the impact of that on employers and taxpayers, it's going to be significant. The unhealthier that we are as a society, the more that employers will pay for coverage for their employees, and the more that taxpayers are going to pay for folks that are on programs like Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah, what's it going to take to really move the needle? I mean, that conversation has been out there for a long time here in Indiana, and perhaps there's been some positive movement, but certainly not substantially. What's it going to take, in your view, to get for Indiana to get its arms around that whole healthy Hoosier issue?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's multifactorial, and so I don't know that I have a silver bullet for you there. There's been a lot of investment into public health. Dr. Weaver's done a lot of great things at the public health level to really discern by county what are the challenges that we have with that. As health system entities, we look at areas where we can help out with that. Mortality in infant and newborn, the infant and mother mortality across the state is something where we really need to take a look at. And with the Women's and Infants Tower that just recently opened at 86th Street, handling tertiary quaternary care within that environment, something we need to do. And so that is kind of from a health system aspect, from a personal accountability and making right decisions. And again, I reflect that. I split the mirror up and look at my own decisions when I make, what I eat, how much I exercise, what I don't, when I don't exercise, and how that impacts my own personal health. There's a growing conversation about that I think is justifiable.
Yeah. Ask you about the state of healthcare in Indiana. As you look at any national trends that may be, current or on the horizon that stand to impact Indiana, there are things going on nationally, either from a regulatory standpoint or otherwise, payments, otherwise, that stand to impact Indiana?
Gary, the biggest thing that I think about is just demographics and just aging demographics and the amount of care. The last statistic I saw is that about 10,000 people per day are joining Medicare. And so when you look at the amount of folks that are moving from commercial paying to government paying, and with that shift in payment, along with the amount of demand of what is needed as a individual ages, that's a tough economic equation. And in the meantime, when you look at, as we deliver care, our highest line item is salary, wages, and benefits, right? We're trying to ensure that the nurse that's working the floor keeps up with the inflation that we see in society, and the supplies that we receive, they're going to face the same inflationary pressures that everybody else faces. And so as we've seen those challenges, you see that really, really difficult to navigate. So I see in terms of kind of business terms, you hear about hockey sticks, right? Mm-hmm. I see a hockey stick of demand coming at us with just demographic shifts and folks aging. I see a continual hockey stick of inflation. I don't see that curve bending at all. And with inside of reimbursement, that is almost like an inverse hockey stick. And so you see those competing factors that if you're not careful, it can really keep you up at night.
Yeah. Much more ahead with Chad Dilley, the president at Ascension St. Vincent in Carmel. We'll talk about his path to Carmel and his role here in central Indiana, and a lot more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
We build Indiana. The Laborers International Union of North America are men and women building roads and bridges to get Hoosiers where they're going today, and a new energy infrastructure that will keep Indiana competitive tomorrow. LIUNA's over 12,000 statewide members also grow local economies, earning good union wages, shopping where they live and work, and paying taxes. We build Indiana for good jobs and stronger communities. The Laborers International Union of North America. We are LIUNA.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Chad Dilley. Chad is the president at Ascension St. Vincent Carmel. And Chad, we talked a lot about business in the first part of the podcast. Let's get a little personal now. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in East Central Illinois, small town called St. Joseph, right along I-74, not too far from the Indiana border there between Champaign and Danville.
Have you ever been to the Beef House?
Absolutely. We would actually go there every Christmas Eve. That was our tradition.
Is that right?
Christmas Eve. Yeah, no joke. And a lot of really fond memories at the Beef House, and just in anticipation as a kid driving back home to open up your Christmas presents.
Oh, that's great. Great tradition. Our family is friends with the Wright family there. And I grew up about 40 minutes south of the Beef House. So know it well.
We may or may not have come over the border to get fireworks as well too in Covington. So that
I know exactly what you're talking about. So grew up in a rural setting. What'd your folks do? Were they farmers, or what'd your folks do?
Yeah, so my dad was a professional firefighter and my mom stayed at home. And so as I watched my dad work, he loved what he did. He loved serving. He'd go to the firehouse every third day and put his life on the line to serve the community. And that had a deep impact on me within my career choice. Actually, 3 generations of firefighters in my family. My grandfather, my father, and my brother still is a firefighter, all professional firefighters. And my dad actually retired as being fire chief of his department.
Wow. Wow. How about, so obviously that impacted you a great deal. How about just growing up in a rural setting, very small town, rural setting? How did that impact you as you reflect on it now, impact you and who you are today?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved my upbringing. Everybody knew everybody. It's kind of everybody called your friend, right? You've heard that lyric before.
Yep.
But really just kind of gave me a grounding of how to navigate. And I think it gave me a deep appreciation for the work that everybody does. When I think about in the hospital, whether you're keeping the rooms clean or whether you're the most talented surgeon on a team, your role is important. And I think it gave me an appreciation for everybody across that entire socioeconomic spectrum.
Mm-hmm. And you like sports, right? Give me the scoop, because I think you were a pretty decent baseball player.
I was okay. And that was really a path for me. I'm a first generation college grad, and baseball and academics are really how I was able to navigate through, pay for a good portion of school, and really help set the tone for how to manage time. As you play college athletics, really balancing time, balancing work that you have to do, performance. And it taught me how to deal with failure too, particularly in a sport like baseball. You fail 7 out of 10 times, you're pretty good, right? So it helped me navigate and just develop that grit and resilience, and really, really fond memories. Probably the best part about playing college baseball is I met my wife through that. I played baseball with my wife's brother. And so I feel like I hit a home run with that one.
That's good. Very, very good. So college, when you thought about college, did you consider several different colleges? Where'd you end up? And talk about that college experience.
Yeah, so I ended up at Olivet Nazarene University. It's about an hour south of Chicago, private Christian school there. Really great fit for me culturally, good opportunity for me to play baseball there, and was just a great experience where I still have lifelong friends, and really formative to me from a faith perspective, from a relationship perspective. Again, met my wife there. When I was going to school there, the ratio was 2 females to 1 male at a school. So I way outkicked my coverage, and the odds were in my favor to do that.
That's good. That's good. So faith, went to a faith-based college, and that obviously faith is very important to you. It's very clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly here it's something we value inside of St. Vincent as well too. As you navigate the ups and downs of life in general, it's good to know where your foundation is and where it should be. And having an organization where your values align it's really deep and meaningful.
Graduated from all that Nazarene College. Talk about your path to healthcare. How'd you get interested in healthcare? What did you major in college?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did my MBA, and as I was going throughout school, I started to realize I could go to an economics class and kind of roll out of bed and just excel in that class. And it's something that came natural to me. Not other classes came natural to me, right? But that was one that did. And on the baseball field, I could see that I was a leader. I was a catcher there, so naturally interfacing with pitchers, the team, calling plays on the field. And I could see that I had some business acumen, and I could see that I had some leadership capabilities. And if you go back to my childhood, watching my dad go to the firehouse every third day and just loving it, right? He was very much one that would indicate that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And he really loved being at the firehouse and serving others. And so I've had something ingrained inside of me to serve others. And so when I was going through and kind of figuring it out. I was actually exposed to a couple of Olivet alums locally in that area that were a part of healthcare leadership and just were able to walk me through what their day looks like. And I had some aha moments of, wow, I can take business acumen, I can take leadership and take service of others and bring those three things together and do a lot of good with it. And I found a home with that. We moved to the Indianapolis market about 11 years ago, and it's been a great home for my family. And I just feel honored to serve the team here.
What experiences do you think have most shaped your leadership style?
Yeah. I think that early on in my career, I actually grew up a little bit more on the physician practice side of things. And I got to work very, very closely with doctors. And doctors have what's called an NPI number. That stands for a National Provider Identifier Number. It's kind of the social security number of a physician. And I realized early on, I don't have an NPI. And these physicians have NPIs. And I am here to listen. I'm here to serve. I'm here to remove impediments. And then as I grew throughout my career, it's written that where there is no vision, people perish. And I think that's where I see it from a leadership perspective is having the vision, because without that, people will perish. And that is a form of servant leadership, is to have great vision so that the team can go in the right direction. So I think that time spent early on with physicians, understanding the demands that they go through, how their life is, how they navigate through some of the complexities and just how some of those arrangements work. I think it helps me be a more effective servant leader. I also do think I've had exposure to a fair amount of capital projects, and understanding the complexity of executing a capital project and major capital project and working across that array of whether it's the design aspect, the construction aspect, bringing in medical equipment, bringing all those things together to make a solid business case. That's been very formative for me as well too, to get exposed to that and the complexities that come with the project.
What advice would you give to young people maybe thinking about or aspiring to enter the healthcare industry today? Certainly a very changing and competitive environment in healthcare. Is there advice based on your experience that you would give to young folks thinking about healthcare?
Yeah, I would say, particularly if you're non-clinical like myself, you're there to serve. And you have to remember that it's not about you and you're there to serve. And you have to know that things are going to change. It's a evolving, adapting, dynamic field, and that things are going to change. The biggest piece of advice that I give to early careerists is I think about this, Gary, from a Venn diagram perspective. You have what you're good at. That's one circle. You have what you like to do. That's another circle. And a lot of things we do what we like to do, and we're good at what we like to do. There are some times where you may be good at something, but you may not like to do it. You may be great at accounting, but you may not love accounting. That's going to create some conflict for you down the road. You're not ultimately probably not going to be satisfied. The piece where I find that young people miss is that the bottom of that Venn diagram is a circle that says what your organization needs. And so finding something that you like to do, finding something that you're good at, and ultimately what your organization needs, and bringing those three things together, look for that and lean into your strengths, look for that. Hopefully you enjoy doing it. And at the most important piece is your organization needs that. If your organization doesn't need that, and it's something that you like to do and you're good at, you have more of a hobby than you have as a career.
Mm-hmm. Final question for you, Chad. What priorities, as you look at Ascension St. Vincent Carmel, what's your vision of what you would like the hospital to look like in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I think about culture, and I think about, going back to my previous comments about people. It's going to take a lot of people to take care of the care that's coming at us, to take care of the demands that are coming at us. And so continuing to have a very engaged workforce, continuing to make this a place that people want to come to work and have that culture. One of the things that I indicate to the team is that when we walk through the hallways, I expect that we say hi to each other. I expect that we engage and that we interact with each other. And that's not necessarily true at every hospital. So having a culture where people want to be here, and part of that too is making the job easy for the team, and then removing the impediments with that. And so when I think about the big picture and where we're going 5 years from now, I think about it pretty simplistically of continuing to be a place where people want to come to work, because we have to almost over-index on people, because that's what's going to take care of all the patients that are in the
Chad Dilley, the president of Ascension St. Vincent Health in Carmel. Chad, it's been great to chat with you and to catch up with a little bit about your background and also challenges and opportunities in the healthcare sector. I really appreciate the time, and I hope to see you soon.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Talk to you soon.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast. We're a weekly conversation presented by PNC with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes, more than 200, and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.